Okay, hi. This is Eric Wright. This presenting my final project for CSET 4850, which is a research paper and presentation. The topic that I've chosen is ransomware. So just a brief introduction of what ransomware is. It's a type of malware attack that locks a user out of his or her computer system typically until some sort of ransom, whether it be the form of US dollars or Bitcoin or another anonymous source, is paid so that the user can unlock their computer. The malware locks the computer and demands money from the user. Some types of ransomware not only just lock out the computer, but they also encrypt the files in the system, whether that be all the files or just certain extensions, file extensions in the system. Um, that differs between each type of attack, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. So basically, ransomware can be distributed in multiple ways. Most of the more common ways come from email phishing schemes or spam campaigns where a user receives an email and they click on a link, they download a file, and that file propagates into the ransomware attack. So, what is ransomware? Basically, they come in two parts. There's two different parts of a ransomware attack on a system. Usually, there's this ransom note, which you can see this image on the right, which basically I mean, it's basically what it sounds like, a ransom note. It asks for money in exchange for getting your system back. So you'd have to pay, the quote unquote vendor or team behind the attack a sum of money in order to unlock your system. That's one part, and then some of the more advanced types of ransomware also include file encryption, meaning that not only is your computer locked, but if you were somehow able to bypass this screen, the lock screen, then even if you did, your files would be encrypted and you wouldn't be able to access them without getting a key from the vendor by paying that sum of money. So moving on. So how does ransomware spread? We kind of touched on this already, but obviously different types spread in different ways. Email spam campaigns are quite common. Typically that means a malicious URL coming through an email that is under the guise of a company email or an email maybe even from someone that the user knows personally. Software vulnerabilities definitely are a common thing. SMB server vulnerabilities have kind of propagated a lot of the big attacks in recent days. Not only that, but Dropbox, CCleaner, other common applications have been known to carry these viruses almost as like an adware type of thing that then turns into a ransomware attack. Clicking on phishing emails, again, very common. Some more advanced ransomware can spread from the use of removable drives. So plugging a USB thumb drive into one computer puts the virus on that computer, and then plugging into another one puts it on another computer, or plugging a non-infected USB into an infected computer transfers the file onto the USB, which then it can be transferred to other computers as you plug that USB in to those other computers. Also, at least me, in my personal experience, I've seen this people posing as IT staff or Microsoft, Apple, Samsung, whatever, posing as staff, calling or emailing a user and asking them, hey, let me remote onto your computer so I can help you. You have a virus, and then that turning into an attack. And finally, what's becoming more and more common is sort of like the USB thumb drives, is these viruses are have built-in algorithms that allow them to spread through computer networks, through propagation routines, and that sort of thing to really broaden the scope of any sort of attack. So, me personally, I have had a lot of personal experience dealing with ransomware attacks in the past. I have worked in a number of places uh, in college, in particular, where I've dealt with these kind of attacks. So just kind of in this section, I'm going to detail some of the things that I have seen. So for a while, between 2012 and 2016, I worked as a computer repair technician for the University of Toledo IT department based out of Carlson Library. Um, we serviced personal computers for UT faculty, staff, and students. They would come to us with a computer that had a hardware problem or a software problem, and it was a free service where we would fix those problems for them. So throughout my time in that in that um, in that field or in that position, I saw quite a bit of ransomware. Typically, the most common ones that we would see were just kind of simple lock screen attacks, is kind of the layman's term for it, or ransom note attacks where the computer would lock out and there would be a ransom note type thing displayed like the previous screen where it showed, hey, your computer is locked, you have to pay this amount of money in order to unlock it. I've seen a lot of people waste a lot of money trying to pay these people to unlock their computers with no luck at all. That was pretty typical of the CryptoLocker virus, which was a fairly common one, especially in the earlier years of working in this job, around like 2013 and 2014. It was a virus that would lock the system out and then wouldn't actually unlock if you paid anyone. I've seen several students lose data or lose, their entire operating system through that attack. Most of the time, that sort of attack wasn't something that we could actually fix at this job. It was more, you had to reinstall the operating system, or there was no way to get in through a back door and take your files. We did use a couple of programs that if you were lucky, it would reset the entire registry of the computer. It would reset the boot sector. It might get rid of the lock screen and you might be able to get to your files, but the success rate of that was very low. So we saw a lot of students who never backed up their data, never backed up any of their files at all, come in with one of these attacks, and they would lose everything, and it was pretty devastating. At least one time I saw a student come in and they said that they were contacted by Microsoft, that their computer had a virus, and they were speaking with a gentleman over the phone who instructed them to install a remote desktop application that he then got on and started, calling her racial obscenities and started downloading files and eventually locked her out of her system, which was not an incredibly common way. Most of the time when we ask people, how did you contract this virus? It was, I clicked on a spam email. But occasionally like an RDP type thing would come through where someone would pose as Microsoft to lock someone's files. The CryptoLocker virus was pretty common for us, at least during that time. We did see other ones, sort of smaller name ransomware viruses that would also encrypt files in addition to the ransom note lock screen. For instance, I know at least one PhD candidate came through our shop saying, hey, all of my data for the last 8 years is on my laptop here, and I have this CryptoLocker virus. I need you guys to do something. And there was nothing we could do because not only was the screen locked, his files were encrypted. We were able to remove the lock screen, but the file encryption was something that we couldn't do anything about. And again, these CryptoLocker hackers are notorious for not actually unlocking the computer after you pay the ransom. So there was really nothing we could do, and it was pretty devastating to tell this student that 8 years of his life had basically been deleted. I saw a lot of people who were really emotionally devastated by the effect of a ransomware attack. So that was something that was common in my computer repair technician position. Currently, and since early 2017, I've worked as a tier 2 IT support for the University of Toledo College of Engineering's Engineering College Computing department of an IT department for the College of Engineering. So I get dispatched to deal with viruses whenever our intrusion detection system picks them up. I get a ticket in my queue, and I have to go out to sort of remove viruses or reformat an operating system if it's necessary. But I have seen a few ransomware attacks, particularly in research labs. Earlier this year, summer of 2018, a computer in a research lab, which multiple people accessed, multiple people had data on it, was infected with ransomware, and the files were encrypted. Definitely nothing that we could do about it. The user had used a local administrator account to actually download software, and through that, in sort of an adware type situation, they contracted a virus, which there was nothing we could do about. Again, files were encrypted, so we had to talk with the person's research advisor and his whole research team and explain to them that all of your data is gone because someone was a little bit too cavalier with their administrative account, and that was, a lot of people lost a lot of work, a lot of time, and it was, a upsetting situation for everyone involved. Another one, and I'll touch on this more in the later section, in May of 2017, a ransomware attack called WannaCry became very prevalent. It was a ransomware attack that exploited a vulnerability in SMB server file systems, and was a massive attack globally. Many large organizations lost a pretty incredible amount of data. I never saw anyone at the University of Toledo in the College of Engineering contract a WannaCry ransomware virus, but the effect of that was that basically a month or two of my life working at this job was spent patching systems so that they didn't get the WannaCry virus. Microsoft put an automatic update through to patch these systems, particularly Windows 10 and Windows 7 systems, but in a research environment like the engineering college, a lot of computers stay offline for a long time, meaning that they were vulnerable if they did, plug their computer back into the network. So I spent quite a bit of time manually patching offline computers. So that's a bit of the personal experience I've had with the virus. Obviously, a lot of emotion and I guess disparity I've seen caused in people through this virus. Seeing people react to losing their life's work of data is, it's not pretty, and it's something that, I definitely warn people against whenever I can. So that being said, there's a few well-known attacks that I'd like to go into in a little more detail. As this slide says, there are definitely hundreds of ransomware attacks out there. They are quite common, but these are a few that are rather, I don't want to say popular because obviously they're not popular. Notorious is probably a better word. So CryptoLocker I've sort of touched on. WannaCry I've sort of touched on, and then SamSam is another big one. But in this section, I just want to go into them in a little more detail. So CryptoLocker, this is the screen that would pop up. This is in a Windows XP or Windows 7 system saying that your personal files are encrypted. A lot of the time with CryptoLocker, that wasn't the case. We'd catch the virus in time before it actually started encrypting the files, but sometimes it would go through and there's nothing that we could do. As you can see, this is demanding an amount, $300 US to unencrypt the system. And it even actually says the encryption method that it uses. Which is interesting that it would give away that, but it's actually been seen that that's not true. So CryptoLocker began spreading in late 2013. As I said, it's one of the first ones that not only locked out the system, but also did encrypt files. Um, so on that screen, it said that it used RSA encryption, but we've actually found that it uses both AES and RSA encryption. And the way that works is that the it uses it uses AES encryption to encrypt the files themselves. But then what it ends up doing is it actually uses RSA encryption to encrypt the decipher key for the AES encryption, meaning that RSA public key encryption was used to encrypt the key to decrypt the AES encryption, interestingly enough. So it actually had a whole nother layer of encryption being used in addition to what it initially said that it does on the ransom note screen. So like a lot of ransomware, this one was spread through email spam, and eventually, as this virus was developed further, the team behind it gave it the ability to spread through removable thumb drives and even peer-to-peer services. So this was really one of the first big ransomware attacks because it was a lot more far-reaching. An infected thumb drive could be used and not really noticed by something like an intrusion detection system. It could be used on many computers to, infect them with the CryptoLocker virus. And again, this was one of the ones that we saw more frequently in the computer repair division that I worked for, and it was one of the ones that we really couldn't do anything about. So another really big ransomware attack that became prevalent in early 2015, late 2015, early 2016 was this SamSam virus. This is the ransom note screen that would display on a computer that was infected with SamSam. Again, RSA 2048 encryption method being used here. So as I said, it emerged late 2015, early 2016. So what makes SamSam a really unique ransomware attack is that it's published by a really tenacious, active team of hackers that are always updating their ransomware to take advantage of new exploits in server software, common applications, Windows services, et cetera, et cetera. So as it says, it was originally spread through Active Directory credential dumps, people getting hold of, like an administrative account credentials and using that to get onto a computer system. More so these days, they're targeting single sign-on services like RDP. So something that makes them, the team behind SamSam and SamSam in general, rather unique is that they targeted specific file extensions rather than actual folders or whole folders, meaning that they would target things like docs, .ppts, MP3s, files that are more commonly used than other files, PDFs, so that they could do as much damage as possible before the system was shut down and people were able to recover from it. So it took less time to do more damage that way. Again, with the being an active team of hackers, this wasn't just spread through spam campaigns to touch as many people as possible. These ransomware attacks are actually planned pretty meticulously. They're targeted at certain organizations. Larger organizations will be extorted for larger sums of money, whereas smaller organizations will be extorted for smaller. And even if a smaller organization says, they're actually taking the bait and they want to pay the team to decrypt their files, but the price is too high, the SamSam team is known for lowering the price to, actually get a realistic payment. So they're definitely payment driven. And what again is interesting is this is actually one of the only ransomware attacks that's known that actually delivers and will give an encryption key, a decrypt, a decipher key, when payment is made. Sort of in a good business model, their service can be relied on. If you pay them the ransom note, you will get your system unlocked, which for some organizations, the cost of that ransom amount is less than what it would be to, recover from the attack. And so it is a viable business model. And typically their transactions are using Bitcoin, which is anonymous, but also can be Bitcoin transactions can be traced, with a bit of good detective work to see where it was coming from and how much to sort of assess, okay, this business actually did pay the attackers. So there is historical data showing that organizations will pay the attackers rather than having their files encrypted. So a third one, and again, a fairly large one that I've already touched on slightly, is the WannaCry virus. This is probably the biggest attack to date within the ransomware realm. This virus really kind of took the IT infrastructure world by storm in May of 2017. It was first propagated through malicious Dropbox URLs, and then through SMB vulnerabilities, SMB server software vulnerabilities to really make a big impact because everyone's using those services. This SMB server vulnerability was actually something that was well known by the National Security Agency, the NSA, in the United States, that they were researching and actually trying to use, for their own exploitative measures, for spying and that sort of thing. But that research was stolen by hackers to formulate their own attacks to use against businesses and organizations, hospitals, and that sort of thing to really hit a lot of people, as many people as possible. They charged a flat rate of $300 to all systems that were attacked. Unlike SamSam, this was more of a hit as many systems as possible without targeting, and they set a low price to sort of get as much payment as possible. It was a blind attack rather than a really calculated or premeditated attack against particular organizations. Pretty much no one has reported that that anyone's systems have been decrypted after paying the ransom note. So it's there really is no recovering from this attack. It's more just get as many gullible people as possible to pay before word gets out that this is not a viable service. So yeah, large scope, no payoff, almost the opposite strategy that SamSam team uses. It was quickly patched by Microsoft. Microsoft knew about this vulnerability in SMB just like the NSA did, but offline systems are vulnerable, including Windows XP systems, which are no longer supported by Microsoft. Again, something that I've personally dealt with a lot through my current position. So how to defend against ransomware? It seems obvious. You hear this kind of thing all the time, but don't click on emails with suspicious origin. Only click on emails from whom you know the sender. Verify the identity of anyone who sends an attachment. If you get an attachment from someone and you're not sure, or you get an email with an attachment, but the sender seems like, maybe they're not who they say they are, talk to the person, make sure they're actually sending you an attachment. Be aware of spam. Definitely report phishing attempts to network security teams. Most organizations have an email address you can forward phishing attempts to so that they're logged and so that they can block them and, put out a newsletter saying, hey, don't respond to any of these. Definitely don't be embarrassed to admit that you've invoked an attack. I've seen this a lot in my personal experience. People don't want to say that they, did something quote unquote stupid. They clicked on a link they shouldn't have and they let it propagate, and that just makes problems worse. And definitely, sort of the point of this whole endeavor, research common and current attacks. Make sure that you are up to date on what is popular and the methods that are popular for the spread and infection of ransomware. So that's basically it. This was my research project for CSET 4850. Something personally I've seen a lot of I've seen ransomware cause a lot of grief, so it was definitely something that was interesting to me, and something that I will continue to put time and energy into learning about in the future. So thank you for listening.